Floyd, and I'm the lead articles editor of the Mercer Law Review. I know I speak on behalf of all the students and faculty here that we are truly grateful for your presence here today, and we are excited and honored to be celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Legal Writing Institute. Thank you all for being here. We're looking forward to a wonderful panel, and we appreciate all of your work in this effort. I'd like to introduce Dean Daisy Floyd.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Try again. Good morning. Good morning. Better, yeah. I know it's pretty early, and many of you have been traveling. So it is my great privilege to welcome you to Macon, to Mercer University, and to Mercer University's Walter F. George School of Law. It's my great privilege to serve as dean and to bring you greetings on behalf of our students, our faculty, and staff. It is a particular delight for us to be joining with you as we celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Legal Writing Institute. There's only one little problem with that, which is it reminds me of my age, because I was there at the beginning. I was a brand new legal writing director at the University of Georgia Law School, and I remember well the first conference I attended and what it meant to me and the ideas that I took back to the classroom and to my program, and that really helped launch me in a career in legal education, although of course at the time I didn't realize that that's what was happening. So I'm very grateful personally to the Legal Writing Institute and to those of you in this room, as well as being grateful as a professional legal educator to have seen the changes that have occurred in legal education because of the work of the Legal Writing Institute and many of the other organizations that have made this a real field, not just for teaching but for scholarship, and that's been terrific. So I'm so pleased to be a part of the celebration of the accomplishments so far and of looking forward to what is left to be done and all of the wonderful things that will happen in the future. Mercer University School of Law is very pleased to be the host school of the Legal Writing Institute. We're proud of that and appreciate the honor of being allowed to continue to do that. I do want to tell you a bit about Mercer Law School. I know from speaking with many of you that this is your first visit to Macon, and so I do want to welcome you here. That means it is your first visit to Mercer and to the law school. The law school was founded in 1873, so it is one of the older law schools in the country. We have stayed in business through many challenges, the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and a number of other challenges to legal education. We moved into this building in 1978. This building was built by the Insurance Company of North America as their regional headquarters, and the insurance company was actually founded in Philadelphia. So when they decided to build this building, the decision was made that it should be an oversized replica of Independence Hall. So if it looks familiar to you, that's why. We do resemble Independence Hall, but we are a bit larger. I say this often. I don't know if it's exactly accurate, but I say it anyway with great confidence, which is we are one of the few law schools in America with a rocking chair front porch. And so I know that you all have already enjoyed that this morning and hope that you will take some time to explore the school. We are on 3 floors here with classrooms, administrative and faculty offices, and of course a wonderful law library and some student community space. We are a faculty of 32 full-time faculty members and total about 65 staff members. We are on the small side of law schools when it comes to student enrollment. This year we have 430 students. We have chosen intentionally to stay small because we think that reflects a certain approach to legal education to which we adhere, and that includes a number of small class experiences and an emphasis on skills and ethics and professionalism, and of course, as you know, that includes our legal writing program, which shares the values of the overall Woodruff curriculum here at the law school. You may know about our legal writing program, but let me take just a moment to tell you if you don't. It includes a required introduction to legal research course that all students take through the fall semester. It includes 3 required semesters of legal writing courses, and in addition we offer the advanced certificate in research writing and drafting. The advanced certificate program includes a number of upper level courses that students can take to qualify for the certificate, and it includes several semesters in the advanced writing group. I've been very fortunate since I've been dean. I came in 2004 to teach an advanced writing group, and that's been just a wonderful experience for me as I've gotten to watch our students work together, excuse me, in a setting that offers peer critique, and really watch their development as writers, but also their development as editors and nurturers of each other's writing. And I've learned a great deal from our students, so that's been a great privilege. As you know, we do have, I think you know, we have 5 full-time faculty members whose primary teaching role is in the legal writing program, although all of them teach in a number of other capacities. We have 4 professional librarians who teach in our legal writing program as well. David Ritchie is actually going to introduce all of those people a little bit later. But we have many faculty on the law school who help support the legal writing program through their teaching of advanced writing group or other courses that qualify for the certificate program. So we are a school that has a strong commitment to legal writing, and indeed that's one of the things that attracted me when I decided to come here as dean almost 6 years ago. So I want to thank you for being here and for your many contributions to the program. Please make yourselves at home. I've already heard how wonderful our students are, and that's true. I will agree with those comments. They are here to make sure that you have a good experience today, as we are, and so please let us know if you have any needs while you're here. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to our Law Review students, to Ryan and to Brittany in particular for taking the lead and putting this symposium together. We look forward to learning from you and with you today. Now I'm going to introduce David Ritchie. David is a member of our faculty. He is known to many of you, and I have enjoyed working with and getting to know David through the years that he has been at Mercer. I'm proud to say that I recruited David to Mercer, and so that's one of my accomplishments, along with some of the other folks whom you'll hear from later today. David received his law degree from Howard University School of Law. He also holds a PhD from the University of Oregon, and so among his other talents, David brings a great interdisciplinary perspective to his work in legal writing and in other areas. He has been one of the driving forces behind bringing this symposium here and putting this together, and so it's my delight to welcome Professor David Ritchie to the podium.
Well, thank you, Daisy, for that kind introduction. Probably overly kind, I guess, but it's so nice to see all of you. It's particularly nice to see all those students in the back of the room. Just make sure I check off the attendance. Okay, great. Well, this is an exciting day, and I think that these discussions we're going to have here today will be interesting and engaging for all of you. In addition to being a member of the Mercer faculty, which I'm very privileged to be, I'm also currently the Assistant Editor-in-Chief of Legal Writing, the Journal of the Legal Writing Institute, which is co-sponsoring today's events. I'd like to note in that regard that transcripts of today's discussions are going to be published in the Mercer Law Journal, and follow-up articles by participants during today's program will be published in a companion volume being published by the Journal of the Legal Writing Institute. So, I need to thank a whole bunch of people before we move on, and what I'd ask you to do is to just hold off on your applause until I finish everybody, and then when we complete, we can just give them a collective round of applause. So let me start by thanking Dean Daisy Hurst-Floyd for her generosity in supporting this program. She's been a steadfast advocate for legal writing here at Mercer and has supported the Legal Writing Institute in many ways, the latest being her commitment to host this wonderful event here in Macon. Next, let me thank Professor Hal Lewis. Where's Hal? He's way in the back there with the students, okay. Hal is the faculty advisor for the Mercer Law Review. He's the calm hand at the helm, and I appreciate his advice and counsel during the run-up to this event. Thanks also to the students on the editorial board of the Mercer Law Review for their hard work in pulling this event together. I know they put a lot of effort and time into this. In particular, Editor-in-Chief Ryan Ingram. Where's Ryan? In the back again, everybody's in the back. And lead articles editor Brittany Flo, who you've already met, are particularly deserving of recognition. Thanks for their hard work. I'd also like to recognize my colleagues in the legal writing program here at Mercer, Professor Linda Berger. Is Linda here? Linda's right there. Sue Painter-Thorne, I'm not sure if Sue's here this morning. Jennifer Shepard and Karen Snedden. Karen, I think, had to run out and do, oh, there she is. One couldn't hope to find a better group of colleagues to work with. I should note that this is a team that was assembled not only by Daisy, but also by Linda Edwards. This is just another example in a long list of things that Linda did while she was here at Mercer, and we appreciate all that. I can't neglect, though, to mention our teaching librarians who are an integral part of our legal writing program. Professor Suzanne Cassidy, who's the director of the Law Library, coordinates that group, but also John Perkins, Denise Gibson, and Jim Walsh deserve recognition for all that they do for our legal writing program. Finally, also thanks to Professor Kristin Gerdy, I want to introduce you in just a moment, from BYU, and Pam Lysett from the Detroit Mercy College of Law there in the corner, for all the good work that they did in putting this fine panel of speakers together. From its inception last December at a conference at Stetson Law School to its full completion today, this program is a testament of their vision and hard work. Finally, our most heartfelt thanks go to Yana Shaw, the publications coordinator here at Mercer, and general go-to person for all things related to publications and LWI stuff. It's certainly not too much to say that this symposium and so many other things could not actually happen if it wasn't for the hard work of Yana. So where is Yana? She's in the back also as well. It is, in fact, true that Yana is the glue that keeps all of these things together. So if you'll join me in recognizing all these people. Next, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing a good friend of mine. Kristin Gerdy and I have worked together in one capacity or another for nearly a decade. First as colleagues at the legal writing program at the Temple University School of Law in Philadelphia, and most recently as editors on the board of the Journal of the Legal Writing Institute. Kristin's director of the Rex E. Lee Advocacy Program at Brigham Young University in Utah. She's also currently editor-in-chief of the Journal of the Legal Writing Institute. She's a wonderful teacher, a great colleague, and a prolific scholar. I also understand that she's very likely to be one of the newest members of the world-famous Mormon Tabernacle Choir. I will not ask her to grace us with her dulcimer tones and song this morning, but I will ask her to come up and say a few words about today's program. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Kristin Gerdy.
That didn't jinx me. Gotta wait for 2 more weeks. I keep saying just don't let me get bad news on my birthday. Thank you for all being here. It's really amazing to look around and to think that this little idea that we had during a break at a conference almost a year ago has come to bring together such an amazing group of people. And I echo the thanks that's been given already to Mercer Law School, to Dean Floyd, to Brittany and Ryan. I've been involved with many law review symposia over the years, and I've never seen students who have been as invested and have been as on top of things as Brittany and Ryan have been, so thank you. Just a little bit of background. I have been in legal writing since 1996. And for those of you that are students in the room, I was only, if you're 3Ls, 1 year past where you are when I started teaching legal writing. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I went to a conference in Chicago, and the very first program that I went to was on herding cats. And the presenter of that program is one of our first speakers, Joe Ramsfield. And every person as I look around this room has had such an amazing impact on me. So last December at a board meeting of the Journal in Gulfport, Florida, we thought about the fact that this was the 25th anniversary of the Legal Writing Institute. And the current president of the Legal Writing Institute, Ruth Ann Robbins, who you'll hear from later, had planned and is still planning a wonderful celebration, a 2-year celebration of a 25th anniversary. And the Journal Board said, we want to do something to commemorate the history of the Institute, but also the history of the professionalization of legal writing. And so during a break at our board retreat, I talked to Pam Lysett and said, what do you think? I have this idea that maybe we should do a symposium. And it came back into the board meeting and mentioned it to the board members, and they said, that's a great idea. And David said, Mercer Law Review is always looking for a great student. And so things just kind of worked out. The next morning, Pam and I went to breakfast overlooking the ocean in December. It's a very nice thing to do when you're from Utah where it's cold. And within the time that we were eating our omelets and toast, we put together the speakers on these wonderful panels that you're going to hear today. This really fell together, and we've said from the very beginning, this was just meant to be because it was so easy. So welcome, thank you for all that you have done, and we're looking forward to just a wonderful array of speakers today. I will turn the time over now to our first moderator for our first panel, Mary Garvey Alghero from the Loyola School of Law in New Orleans.
Good morning. I share experiences like Kristin, and because our panel is taking an historical perspective, I don't want to trump any of what our panelists will say. However, when I introduce the panelists, I have to make a remark just from my own experience with them. The first person I'll introduce is Laurel Kurios, and Laurel is the director of Seattle's legal writing program. And there's a nice bio, and so I kind of debated, should I go through and do a big, long introduction? But I thought perhaps I'll personalize the introduction, and at my first legal writing conference, I started in '93. In '94, I went to this wonderful conference, and at a cocktail party at Chicago, Kent, someone said, oh, you have to meet Laurel Oates. And she walked up, and I went, she's the one who wrote the textbook I used. She's a rock star. And so I felt like I should bow down, and she talked to me. And so Laurel is someone, she's probably one of the first people I met in legal writing, and wow, what a meeting. And she has done so much, not only starting the Legal Writing Institute with a group of others, but also helping it to sustaining it, I guess, and also building it to an international level, which she will talk about. The next person I'd like to introduce is Jill Ramsfield, and I was also at that Herding Cats presentation. And again, one of Jill's books is a book that I've just come to love. I saw it as a law student and thought it was the greatest thing, and I still use it with my students. So again, that rock star moment of, that's Jill Ramsfield, she's the one on the book. Hopefully some of you guys are out here as students and you're seeing some of your textbook authors. And Jill was at Georgetown at the time. Now she has made it to Hawaii, which is just a wonderful story, I think, in itself. The other person on our panel is Mary Beth Beazley. And Mary Beth is someone who, when I saw her make a presentation in Seattle, she was in a room where it was kind of an in-the-round type experience, and she had all of us on the edge of our seats. She was brilliant, she was entertaining, and just captivated the entire group. Mary Beth is at Ohio State University at the law school, and she is the director there, and she is someone I think who's beloved to a lot of us. She also has written a textbook that's used so widely on appellate practice. So with that, I'm not going to take up their time, and I'll turn it over to Laurel Oates.
Jill started at University of Puget Sound in Seattle. Well, actually Tacoma, Washington back then. Thank you so much first to all of you who have put this together, to this wonderful group of students there. This is just a wonderful experience for those of us who have been teaching legal writing. I am going to start with one personal story before I go to the story of the Legal Writing Institute, and that is I was hired, I graduated from the University of Puget Sound. I was an evening student, went to work for the court. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. One day got a call and said, would you like to come teach legal writing? I had a degree in elementary education. That seemed like a good fit. And so I went off to teach, and that very first day, the dean told me two things. One, under no circumstances will you be here more than 2 years. Yeah, it's now 30. Deans have come, deans have gone. I'm still here. And second of all, as a legal writing professor, never teach content. And I think that has been really one of the huge differences that legal writing has happened, as people talk about it later today. Yes, I could teach citation, I could teach research, but never could I teach the law. And so times have changed remarkably. This is also a first for me because in all of these 30 years, I have never read a paper, and I'm actually not sure that I can do that. So I'm going to start by pretending to read, and then if it doesn't work out, we'll quit, and we'll just talk very shortly. So I'm going to do kind of the beginning, and then they've given me an opportunity to talk also a little bit at the end. And I have labeled this Once Upon a Time, because in so many ways this feels a little bit like a fairy tale for me, at least personally. So here it goes. Once upon a time, far, far away, at what was then a very new law school, it was really situated on this beautiful bay with trees on the very northwest coast of the state of Washington, two very young and very naive teachers, and actually back in those days we were called instructors, and that was Chris Rideout and myself, decided we were kind of lonely and we wanted to have a conference. We wanted to meet other people who were teaching legal writing. The good news is that Chris had gotten a grant, what was left over at that time was a $3,000 grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities to really try to use writing across the curriculum. And so he was coming from the English department and helping us incorporate writing into the law school. So we took that grant money, we went to our dean, who was this wonderful man, Fred Towson, who had not come up through the academic ranks to be dean, but who was a practitioner, a very good lawyer, and who was committed to creating at this new law school a wonderful legal writing program. They said, sure, you guys can have your conference. What if it costs more than $3,000? How are you going to pay for it? And Chris, we said, this is an interactive presentation, Chris, you just learned that. And we said,
we'll pay for the rest.
and, we were making $13,000 a year. And we said, yeah, if there's any cost overruns, we'll pay for them out of our own pocket. And the good news is we didn't have to pay anything. So what happened is we put together a program. We came up with a site, and we sent out these brochures really just across the land. Back in those days, there were no listservs, there were no emails. Many people didn't even have voicemail on their telephones. And so it was really with a great deal of apprehension that once we sent those out, that whether we would get any responses. I know Chris and I had several days when we thought, nobody's coming to our party. But there was a huge kind of gradual building, and to our great surprise, we actually had 108 individuals from 56 different law schools that showed up on that beautiful Seattle, August day back in 1984. And Mary Lawrence was one of those that was there, and those friendships were begun and have flowered for all these many years. Those first conferences were really very, very different than our conferences have come to be. First of all, I think that there may have been fewer than 4 or 5 individuals who came to that conference where the school gave them any kind of economic support to come to the conferences. So people were coming on their own dollar to come to this particular conference. So we kept it very cheap. We held it in a university dorm, which is where we all stayed, where we had to figure out how to share bathrooms once again. We had no banquets. We did have a great caterer and great food. And some wonderful things happened during the 3 days of that conference. There were some wonderful presentations, but really the best thing that happened was that those of us who had been teaching, and most of us had been teaching for only a year or two, found other people who shared our passions, shared our failures, shared our successes, And really, it was kind of like being back in the college thing. We got up early in the morning and we talked at breakfast. We had presentations. We talked during the breaks. We had a barbecue and a little bit of volleyball in the evening. And then we went back and the caterer put the leftovers every night, including the wine and the beer, in the refrigerator. And we talked late into the night. Not surprisingly, that at the end of that conference, which was designed to be a one-time thing, people said, no, we want to be able to continue this relationship that we have started together. There were two things that were extremely fortuitous, called being at the right place at the right time. A few years earlier, the AALS had held the first ever legal research, reasoning, and writing conference, our section meeting in 1980 in Tennessee? Louisville. And there really were only scheduled to be every 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. But Ralph Brill and other group of people managed to get another one scheduled for the following year. So we had that conference in 1984, and Ralph and others managed to get us another one in 1985 at Chicago, Kent. And that is really where the Legal Writing Institute was born. During a lunch of that particular conference, a group of us went out and we sat at a small restaurant on a corner in Chicago and decided to start this group. The only downside of that entire meeting is Mary Lawrence and Marjorie Rombauer were with our group, but some of us have much longer legs, and we started talking and we started walking, and somewhere along the line at some stoplight we lost them. And so they were not physically at that first lunch. They were there physically. We sent Joe Kimball out to look for them, and we never found them. Where's Daisy?
They were the best friends for me. Exactly.
Daisy did, in fact, have long enough legs that she was there, and so there were 15 of us who were at that lunch and who created the Legal Writing Institute. The first few years after that were an amazing few years. In a very, very short period of time, we started a newsletter, and it was named The Second Draft. We began the planning for the journal, which would take a much longer time to do. We also did all those things that you have to do to become official. We had to have bylaws, we had to elect a board, and we knew that we wanted to have regular conferences. So even as that 1985 conference was ending, we were beginning to plan the 1986 conference, which really, although it was the second Legal Writing Institute conference, it was really the first Legal Writing officially conference. I really think that conference was the turning point. It was that second conference that really cemented the Legal Writing Institute as a group, and really even of that conference, and one of the nice things about it being 25 years later, nobody else can really now contradict me on some of these stories. Because we didn't take pictures, we didn't keep notes, we didn't do any of those other good things. But one of the speakers that was there was George Gilpin, and he made an electrifying speech at the final lunch, an impromptu electrifying speech. It really called on us that if we wanted to be a profession, we should make it a profession. And it was really a call to action on all of our parts, and it really did. You know, you had that initial stuff. I think it could have stopped. George said, we need to go forward. So a couple kind of quick things here at the end. One of the things that I think is easy to do at a time like this is to really romanticize the past. And it really was a very good time in so many ways. I think back to those early conferences where I knew everyone. We were all kind of at the same place in our lives, and they were great times. We formed friendships that have lasted decades. We also, I think, were a place where we began and kind of maybe an insidious way to change the way law school teaching was done. I think the first legal writing conference was the first time the notion of collaborative or group work was ever mentioned as a teaching technique that you could use in a law school classroom. You know, moving away from the lecture, moving away from the Socratic method. It was where the people in our group who were familiar, like Chris and many others, with the literature on the writing process started talking to us about the theory. And we began to design our courses, not just about what we had been taught, not just repeating what we had been taught, but really doing it on a theoretical basis and trying to move our profession forward. Those, though, were also really bad days, in the sense that 10 years after that first conference, maybe even 6 years after that first conference, I think there were only 4 or 5 people who were still teaching legal writing. Almost everyone had been forced either to become a migrant legal writing teacher, moving here for 2 years when the cap expired, moving there for another 2 years, moving on, or simply saying, this is what I want to do, but you won't let me do it, and therefore I'm going to go off and do something else. And so when we think back about that and how that change occurred, one of the things that really stands out for me is that someone in that very first conference said, we need to talk about status, we need to talk about job security. What was your job security back then, Jill?
It was 3 years.
I think she had a 3-year, but in that very kind of first conference, she had a call on status and security, and within a few years, she had started the survey, which I think she's going to talk about now, which really has been that force that has allowed us to go in and talk to our own schools, to talk with people who accredit our schools about the status, the salary, and the stature of legal writing faculty. So I'm going to turn it over to Jill now.
Aloha. We would say aloha kakahiaka, means aloha in the morning. But really where I'm from is Wisconsin, so we just say yahe. Thank you so much for the symposium, for the opportunity to be here. Students, I'm impressed that you're here. Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for being a part of history. Thank you for being willing to take the baton we're about to pass to you. I really realized that at the last Legal Writing Institute conference when 4 of my students are now teaching legal writing in other institutions. I went, oh my goodness, I'm a grandmother, mother, or something. So I hope you're hearing, some of you, a call to what I think is actually the most rewarding and interesting and fascinating aspect of teaching in a law school. It's what I call the performance art. My background is music, and we are the people who teach performance, and it's hard. You need to know the theory, you need to know the history, and you need to teach good technique, and we really love doing it. But I have to kind of pick up on the cat idea here, I guess, because that talk about herding cats was about being a director and working with, you know, beautiful, individual, creative people who want to kind of do their own thing. I'm actually kind of a dog person myself. I like to dog heel, you know. They just had Up on the plane. Did you ever see Up? I mean, it's just such a great movie. If you haven't seen it, see it. The dogs are great. But my husband's a cat person, so we ended up having cats over the years. And we moved to Hawaii. We couldn't bring our cat. She was a little too old to make the trip. And so we said, if you want to get a cat, I'll say no, and if I want to get a cat, you'll say no. Well, we ended up getting 2 cats. And this last June, we were in Washington, we got a call, Houston, we have a problem. And according to our house sitters, the 2 Siamese kittens had turned on the faucets in the master bathroom and had flooded the entire house from top to bottom, 3 stories, and out the front garage. Now this you would think would be a little distressing. Completely flooded, the house was completely flooded. And I think it's very interesting to bring this story up in the context of the Legal Writing Institute and that presentation of herding cats, but also back to the first conference of 1984. What do you do with creatures who flood everything and make a mess out of something that you create? What do you do? You know, and of course my sister who hates cats is like, they're going, right? And I like, you know, can I do that with a dean? Can I do that with a few faculty members who have been flooding my program and trying to, you know? And long story short, we have a newly remodeled house at the expense of State Farm. And we had the right insurance, but you know, a lot of what we are doing in this, things that we see as people in legal writing, things that seem to be a flood, things that seem to be personalities that won't respond and won't act, whether it's students or it's fellow faculty or it's deans or it's our own colleagues. We have to find a way. We have to see the good in it. We have to find a way to clean up and remodel and refresh ourselves again and again. And the people in this room have done that repeatedly through the years. It's really inspiring to me to look around. We were at that first conference. We didn't know what future we had. We didn't know that we would have deans who would be leading the way for us and honoring what we do as a profession and helping us move on. Some have, some haven't. We've had a lot of challenges. And we've remodeled a lot. And whether it's a program at a different school, our own classroom, our own attitudes toward each other, we've managed to be a herd of pretty neat cats, actually. And I think there are lessons in this, whether or not you students decide to choose this as a profession or just to practice law, whatever. You have to meet the challenges head on, and that is what the story is here today. The wonderful beginnings of a grant. The thought was to pass on some wonderful pedagogy about legal writing and to really think about what it is we're teaching and how we teach it. And sure enough, at that first conference, in our small groups, I was an instructor, and I was instructed to lead a small group. And I said to Laurel and Chris, well, what does that mean? Well, just have people talk about what they want to talk about and introduce themselves. And this is let's get to know each other. And okay, and I had a lot of training in that. And facilitating, no problem. So we went around the room. Every single person said, I don't know what my next job is going to be. I can't afford to feed my family. I mean, I'm making no money. I have no job security. I'm killing myself reading these papers. This is not a good thing. And I'm like, oh, and what school are you from? You know? So I'm taking these notes, and then, and another thing, said the next person. And I can't hold that. And I go, really? Oh, that's nice. And how are you? You know, and another thing, you know. And so it was only about 10 or 12 people, and I thought, whoa, because I had just gotten into the field myself, and I hadn't realized these things. I was so happy to be in Seattle and so on. And I thought, we got Houston. We have a problem here. And I just took notes. I mentioned it to a few other people. And we thought, this is too good of an opportunity. We didn't know there would be another conference. We didn't know what was going to happen next. And I thought, well, let's just write this down somehow. And I asked if anybody was willing to help, and I know Terry Phelps and a few others said we'd be happy to help. I think it was much in the way of the chagrin of Laurel and Chris, who were like, we're here to talk about teaching. It's the teaching thing we're doing, and it's okay, but you know, can you not take any time away from the conference? And I said, no, I don't want to. So during the lunches and in the background, we just came up with that statement that has been published by Mary Lawrence in her wonderful History of the Legal Writing Institute, that basically said, this is really a bad idea, deans. You know, you're bringing people in, they're trying to do a good job for you, you're kicking them out as soon as they get good. There just isn't any common sense in that. So you ought to recognize this as a profession, you ought to give job security, and it says, that original statement, you should treat legal writing professionals equally with law faculty. Equally. That's never been one other thing on my mind, ever. Equal. I am a communist, I come from Wisconsin. You know, everybody's equal. Nobody's better than anybody else. You know, we have that reverse snobism in Wisconsin. Oh, you think you're pretty smart there, you got a footnote. Whoa. So I grew up, no footnotes in a brief, no footnote, you know, that's for scholarship, not for this, you know. Say, who do you think you are? So the equalities really became very important. We did the statement at that conference, and we sent it, by God, we sent it to all the deans. We just said, hello, used the snail mail, and said, we're out here, this is what you should be doing. It was a fairly bold thing to do in 1984. And then fast forward to George's wonderful speech, and what I didn't know was happening is in George's inspired speech, he said you should do a national survey, and Jill should do it. I was sitting there going, really? Thanks, George. And at that time I had moved on to Georgetown, and we did have the resources, and so we did the 1990, 92, 94, 96 surveys. We did them every other year with paper. It was not fun. I didn't know anything about empirical research. This might be one of the first bits of empirical research ever done in the field of law. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew we needed 100 questions. I wrote them up, had some good students to help us, and I demanded an 80% return rate. And by demanded it, I meant called everybody, and said, we have to have, I cannot have Dean saying, but it's only a 26% return rate and the statistical validity. And I said, no, we just have to have it. And we've gone up from then. I think we started with 80% that first survey, and now we're in the 90s, I think, in terms of percentage return. It's been taken over by many others who've done a much better job, but it was a great beginning. And those are my 3 points, I guess. It's the statement on equality, I'd like to call it. The pedagogy that we really started discussing at that first conference that has really been the heart of the Legal Writing Institute. It really does come down to what we teach every day, how we teach it, how we import what's happening in composition theory and linguistics, what's happening in law practice, fuse those in our classrooms. And we continue to have such rich conversations, but all begun with that original grant, thank you, Chris, and with the wonderful program that Laurel and Chris put together at the University of Puget Sound. And the third is the surveys. And so I'm just going to end with a few highlights, which will be picked up a little later by Suzanne as she talks about the surveys. But the surveys have helped us to hire additional legal writing professors, to reduce the class size from as much as 216 down to 50, to create positions at our tenure track, to increase the salaries, of course, of legal writing people, to increase the credits that students got. When I went to Georgetown, it was 2 credits in the fall and 1 in the spring. To double the salaries, to ward off changes based on misinformation. And I think most importantly, there's a long list here, but most importantly is the integration intellectually of legal writing into the curricula of law schools across the nation. And I'll just end with this thought as I think about now what our beautiful floors in my house and how things have been remodeled. That's exactly what we have to do every year, in every place, in every program, is what is the law school of the 21st century? How do we integrate best what we're doing in the 21st century? I said to my students last week, the old ads for law firms are going to be gone pretty quickly. This is not a model that's going to carry into the 21st century. It's up to you to create the jobs of the 21st century, which are going to be some sort of fusion between entrepreneurship, I'd say among entrepreneurship, good legal practice, sustainability, and just green thinking. It's going to be a completely different kind of practice. We in legal writing have to see that, foresee it, and we have to prepare our students to be good at that. My example is the tuna fishing farms that are off the Big Island now, where they're going to have these huge farms where they can farm tuna, I'm vegetarian, but where they can farm tuna in the sea, and they won't be sick and they don't have to give them antibiotics. And I said to my students, I bet they need a lawyer. You know, we have to start thinking the way entrepreneurs are thinking, the way the internet is opening possibilities for us. And I think legal writing and legal writing programs are at the center of that. That's where we have the conversation about what are you doing? How is your pen writing? How are you thinking? How do you problem solve? Where is it on paper? What are the possibilities? And it all began with just a little conversation and a small conference in 1984. And now we've got people with permanent positions who are inspiring law students every day. So thank you for even including me in this conversation. I was just lucky to be in the right place at the right time and have the right leads to do a few things that helped us all along. But I just am grateful to have this conversation with all of you, and to our students here, I say carry on this inspiring work that's been begun by those of you who are here. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Beth Beazley, and I'm allergic to cats. But and I was not fortunate enough to be in Tacoma in 1984, although I was already teaching legal writing then. I had graduated from law school in 1983, been fortunate enough to be Terry Phelps's inaugural class at Notre Dame. She and I started law school the same day, I like to say, since she was a PhD in comp. But first I want to say thank you to Daisy and to the students and faculty at Mercer, and to the journals, LWI Journal and the Mercer Journal, for inviting us here. My first conference was in 1988, and I remember it very vividly and very powerfully, and I got to have dinner with Marge Rombauer. And one of the things that we still do, this is one of the many traditions that were started at that first conference, of having the newbies have dinner with the oldies, and now I'm an oldie, which is interesting. And I'm here really to talk about what has been the impact that the Legal Writing Institute has had on faculty, because I'm someone who has really benefited from this, from all of the things that the Legal Writing Institute set in motion. And when I think of the sort of issues that we face, I think of three questions that I've been asked, all of them early in my career. In fact, two of them were asked during an infamous interview I experienced when I interviewed with Vermont Law School. I've told the story several times about how a drunken professor interrupted us during the interview, and at one point asked me if I was a hooker. And over beer, I'll tell you the whole story. But he also asked, he said, well, you can't teach people how to write. They either know or they don't. Where'd you go to law school? Notre Dame. Did they teach you how to write at Notre Dame? That's one of the crucial questions that we face in legal writing, because of a bias that you cannot, this is the misinformation, one of the pieces of misinformation, that you cannot teach people how to write. You are trying to teach beauty. You are trying to teach something that cannot be taught. It's innate. And so that was a question that was really crucial. The other question that Vermont's dean asked me, and my answer is more revealing actually than the question, he said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I said, oh, well, I don't know, but I don't want to be a law professor. And because I could not even conceive of being a full-time permanent legal writing professor, it did not exist. That job was a 2-year job. I then followed that up with another 2-year job that was so horrible that I left after 1 year. I said I changed jobs as often as Russia changed premiers at the time, and so it was just not even the possibility. And the third question was asked, sadly, by a friend at Ohio State, and she's not there anymore. And I won't say she's not my friend anymore, but this tested the friendship. She said, legal writing, can't they get people's wives to do that? And she said this to a person whose job was teaching legal writing. And I think they really illustrate, as I say, these three pieces of misinformation. The one, that you cannot teach people how to write. The second one, that this is something that you can do with no preparation, that you just do it off the top of your head. And the third, that there's no need or possibility for the development of expertise, and therefore no need for scholarship, no need for tenure, no need for permanent jobs. And so these are the three sort of real bugaboos that the Legal Writing Institute has been fighting against. And one of the many ways that the Institute has promoted this fight is the conference. That every 2 years we get together, we share, we talk. And I think an illustrative story, my first job out of law school was teaching at Vermont Law School. I think beauty inspires. Everyone's talking about, I was at this beautiful location, and I was at this beautiful law school, and my roommate was also teaching legal writing. And for the first semester that we taught, we sat every Sunday night. We found out later we didn't talk, and we prepared our notes for class, and we were sick to our stomachs. What am I going to teach? I had no idea, but we did not talk. We were each over in our own little corner of the living room. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And just horribly sick to our stomachs. And then the second semester, we kind of went, duh, we are both teaching, and we started talking and sharing, and just the two of us, which was better than nothing, but then try sharing with the whole country. And again, I feel like whenever I tell my my kids' story, I say, and this was before cell phones. And so this was before the internet, and what a huge difference it made. I think actually legal writing and the internet were made for each other in many ways. But sort of give you an idea of how primitive our materials were. This was the textbook I used this is the actual book that I used my first year of teaching appellate advocacy at Vermont Law School. It's Stern and Gressman's book of Supreme Court practice. It's over 1,000 pages long. 50 pages of it are devoted to writing the brief. So my students bought a $50 book, which in those days was pretty expensive. I don't want to brag, but I got $14,000 a year. And even then, that was a really pathetic salary. But the students were furious, and these 50 pages, like 40 of them are restating the Supreme Court rules. And 5 of them are like, use principles, not string cites. Oh, thanks. Well, that clears it right up, you know. The other book that we used was a much better book, Legal Writing in a Nutshell, but still a lot more devoted to the sentence than the document, you know. And this is one of the big things that the conference did, is people went, wait a minute, you mean even if all the sentences are grammatically correct, the writing might still not be good? You know, that was a revelation, because a lot of our deans thought that all we were teaching was sentence structure and grammar. And a justice on the United States Supreme Court to this day has said in a recent book, there's no such thing as legal writing. And yes, we don't have our own special sentence structure, I know, but doesn't recognize that we're talking about legal structure. I was talking to Lynn Gehring about this, and she said, well, yeah, I guess it's writing, but that's not what we teach. That's just how it comes out. Which I think is so beautiful, that it's the analysis and the law and the reason and the jurisdiction and all of these things, but the writing is how it comes out. And I have my other visual aid. I have to thank Linda and her students. Just a moment. No, this is it. And I'm sure this isn't all. I just want to say, now we have a little more choice of textbooks, okay, than we used to have. And I would guess that it would be hard to find one of these books that didn't start at the Legal Writing Institute Summer Conference. I know my own book that I road tested very many of the things at the conference and got feedback and talked to people. I remember when Shapel Walter and Fajan's book came out, and it had the annotations in the margin that revealed what was going on in each paragraph. I said to students, if this were a sex book, it would be banned for being too explicit. You know, that we really deconstructed and told people what's going on. I can remember at the Legal Writing Conference when Laurel had a handout on organization, and it was like, again, I hate to keep resorting to porn, but it was like, look at this, you know, look what she's got. You know, she's got this thing here that tells how you organize legal analysis. Oh, can we get a copy of that? And we were beyond the mimeograph, I just want to point out, but barely. And so it was so exciting. I remember that, was it a trapezoid that you had the illustration in? And that was actually a part of her book. And I know Jill and Chris's article, Legal Writing, A Revised View, is that the one that kind of said, yes, you can teach this. You know, yes, you can. And oh, wait, I blinked something that happened last year. Okay. And I guess it's hard to even imagine all the different ways that the Legal Writing Institute has helped. One way is, I say, getting together, giving people a place to road test their scholarship. One of the other things, and Ralph is not here, but to start the listserv when the internet came, and to start a listserv for people to talk. And by that time, I moved to Ohio State, and I was all alone. I was the only one who was teaching legal writing full-time. I had adjuncts, and so I had no one to run down the hall. I wasn't living with the legal writing teacher anymore. My husband was very charming, but didn't really have any idea of what to do in class that day. And I remember very vividly, in fact, I wrote to our IT guy and tried to find out when did we get the internet, and I don't know what year it was. Does anyone know what year the listserv started? 85? 94? Okay, I know we didn't have it when I started at Ohio State, because I remember the day that it was installed and that I was signed up for the listserv, and I went to class and I came back and it was live, and I turned it on and there was the list of messages. It was like, oh, here are all my friends, you know, and it was just a wonderful opportunity to communicate and to get help and get advice. And I also think the net is so egalitarian, and the listserv is so egalitarian that of course, and I can say this easily, you didn't have to be from Harvard, because of course no one on the list was from Harvard, because there's an inverse relationship between, never mind, I won't go there, but that, is your idea good? Let's hear it. You know, that if you don't have to show your pedigree before you show your idea. We want to judge you on the basis of your ideas, not on anything else. And so it was so egalitarian, and and I think it promoted. I say that I would not have tenure right now if it were not for the listserv, because it enabled me to, even though I was all alone and had no one to share my ideas with, it enabled me to get to know hundreds of people, and that's how I got into a leadership position, which again, another opportunity. That Legal Writing Institute gave people an opportunity to serve in leadership positions, which helped the dean say, well, maybe there's something here that's not crazy. To develop expertise in teaching, as we've all talked about, these 2-year caps, 3-year caps that were ridiculous, just as people were getting their feet under them, the job would disappear. And I think Dean sort of went, oh, they have learned, oh, they are good, I guess we'll let them stay a little while more. And the caps would get longer and longer and then eventually disappear. And not everywhere, but mostly. I want to just say a little bit about where to go, and Laurel's going to talk about one piece of that. We still have miles to go here. We're not done. We're not done because there are too many schools where legal writing faculty don't have job security. There are too many schools where it's not recognized as being a real field. My own pet peeve is when other courses are called the substantive courses, and legal writing has substance. Legal writing has doctrine. It's being developed all around us, and I will say, because of the limits that have been put on so many legal writing faculty, I say that our scholarship, our doctrine, our theory has sort of come up in the cracks in the sidewalks. Because even though we are limited in so many ways, so many of us are limited in so many ways, it just cannot be stopped. We've got something to say, and we've got things to write about and things to develop, and so we are developing as we go. I was at a conference a few weeks ago with ALI ABA, or Ali ABA, as they say, about the future, you know, the new law firms, and one of the constant themes was that we've got to train the trainers. We've got to train teachers. And this is true actually of all college and university teaching. It's not just law teaching, where it is thought, well, if you're smart enough to get a degree, go in there and teach, you know, and with no concept of not just pedagogy, but andragogy. How do we teach adults? How do we teach people these concepts? And really so much of that work has been pioneered at the legal writing conferences. Sophie Sparrow's name comes to mind, but probably, you know, most of the people sitting in the first few rows have been real leaders in that. So we have something now, not just to give to each other, but to give to the rest of legal education. And so we've just got to make sure they hear it, is our task. And so that is sort of one branch where we're going. Laurel is going to finish by talking about another branch where we're branching not just out of our own law schools, but out of the country as well. So, Laurel.
Still be a klutz 25 years later. Yeah, I asked to talk about another organization here at the last few minutes, and it's kind of for a variety of reasons, so we'll see what comes out here. In 2003, and then again in 2005, my colleague Mimi Samuel and I were invited to go to Uganda to work first with the attorneys that were the ombudsman, I can't say that today, office, and then with the judges and the magistrates. And one of the questions that came up when we received that information, which, by the way, came through email on the listservs from the Legal Writing Institute, was why in a place where there are so many problems, where there are so many individuals who do not have access to fresh water, where there are so many children who die of malaria, where the Lord's Liberation Army is still active, why would the government of Uganda ask for someone to come from the United States to talk to their attorneys and talk to their magistrates and talk to their judges about writing? And it was a whole nother way of looking at what it is that we do in our daily classrooms. And it was, it's taken me some time to kind of come to terms with that. But the answer that I keep getting over and over and over again is that one of the best and the easiest and the cheapest and the most long-lasting things that you can do is to teach those people who are in power, and again, the attorneys, the government officials, the judges, and the magistrates, to write and to communicate clearly. That builds trust. And so there is this huge kind of new role for us to think about as we go out and teach legal writing to our own students, and think about the role that that writing will take as you go out. And it obviously can be for good or for evil, but in the most part, once you write clearly, once you write for your audience and adjust your writing for that audience, things turn out very differently than they might have otherwise. So one quick story on that, and then I'll tell you another story about our last conference. One of the things that we have worked with were the magistrates, and it used to be that you'd have some facts, and then you'd have a conclusion, and you would announce that conclusion in court, and one side, usually the side that lost, would claim that there had been corruption because they lost. And what we did, and it was really in some ways a very simple thing, something that those of you who are in this room know all too well, is something called legal reasoning, which is what we do teach in legal writing, is legal reasoning. And we started helping them write judgments where you not only set out the facts, you set out credibility determinations, you set out your reasoning, and you then came to your result. The allegations of corruption dropped dramatically, and one of the judges that I met with this past summer said, I convicted this guy of a crime a couple of years ago, and he's now out, and I met him on the bridge not too long ago, and he said, you know, my lord, which is what he would be called, my lord, I was so angry with you, and then I listened to your reasoning, and I realized you were right. And I do think the power of the word, the power of good, clear writing is out there. And for those of you who may not yet have jobs after law school, they are looking for people to go and help magistrates draft those kinds of opinions. So if you're looking for another career option, I can help you find some places that you might want to go. But this appeal group, which has received generous support from the Legal Writing Institute and the Association of Legal Writing Directors, has its conferences, which just reflect in so many ways the conferences that were in the 80s and the 90s for the Legal Writing Institute. They're still very, very small. They're people who are meeting another person who teaches writing for the very first time. Have been a wonderful opportunity, one, to share the knowledge that we have developed through the years, but also an opportunity for us to reflect on what it means for our group and really what it means or what makes our group so much different than so many academic groups that are out there. We had a conference in Pretoria in June of this year, and at the end of it, sitting again, you know, lots of informal conversations with a group of individuals from the Durban area, and I kept saying, can we ask you some questions? Sure. Is everybody who teaches legal writing in the United States as passionate about the teaching of legal writing as those, there were 20 of us from the United States who were there? And it was, yes. And she said, but some of you have been doing this 10, 15, 20 years. Are you really that passionate about it? Yes. The next kind of level of questions that started coming, I will say this went on for like 10 or 15 minutes. They really didn't believe me. We had all shared materials, and we'd encouraged them to share materials, and we'd noticed that we were sharing, but they were not sharing. Do you guys really share your materials when you come up with a handout or an idea or a teaching method or a syllabus? Do you actually share it with each other? And the answer is, of course we would share it with each other. But this whole notion of a community that shares with each other, a community that is as collegial and is not as competitive, because that was the next thing. They saw these kinds of stacks of books, because we took tons of books with them. They said, aren't you guys all hating each other because you wrote one book and somebody else is using somebody else's book and not using your book? And I said, I don't think it's ever occurred to us that it was anything but this wonderful gift that somebody else would come up with another way of approaching a subject matter, letting us rethink the way we had done it, hopefully each time coming up with something better or at least different than we had thought we might want to take it. So our group is an amazing group. It has an amazing community. And before I end, I just really, kind of from a personal point of view, really want to pay particular attention to two people in this group, one of whom here is, one is not, who have been so special. Mary Lawrence, for all these years, has been, in my mind, the soul of the Legal Writing Institute. She is just, what is it that's the right thing to do, we think of Mary. And for the real history of the Legal Writing Institute, Mary has her wonderful book, and I brought it with me, so if anybody wants to share it. It has Jill's statement on job security in there. And the other person who could not be here today, I just really, I kind of want to say her role in the Legal Writing Institute, and that's Ann Enquist, who wasn't at the first conference, but was with us at every other conference, who served in the role that no one else would have ever wanted or been able to take care of, which is the role of the treasurer for 12 years as the treasurer. And is one of the reasons why I think that the Legal Writing Institute has been financially in very good shape. That, and Chris would never let us spend any money. But anyway, in this room, when you start looking around and you think of the thousands of hours that people have put in organizing the national conferences, the very wonderful regional conferences, the newsletters, the journals, a message on the listserv. This is just a wonderful community, and I really hope that it is kind of the happily ever after for it. But I also don't want to suggest that this is the end. I've often kind of, in my mind, looked at the Legal Writing Institute, kind of measuring it against my daughter, who was 2 years old when the Institute was first established. She was there playing with her toys. Her contribution to the first conference were her toys, because many people brought their children. And you know, we had our kind of years when we were toddlers trying to figure out where we were going. And then we had a few, I think maybe a little bit of rebellious years in those 14, 15-year-olds. But now at 25, it's this great, it's like where you guys in the back of the room are. It's this great thing. It is a mature organization. It is an organization with skills and with resources. But it is at the beginning of what I hope is this extremely exciting time for those of us who love writing, who want to promote the teaching of legal writing, and who want to use writing as a way, essentially, to take the law to people who may not otherwise have access to the rule of law. So thank you very much.
Thank you for those wonderful presentations. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists?
Can we leave?
I say,
Right. There's one question that I thought probably people would like to hear, and that is, and it kind of goes with the way you completed your talk and talking about the future, and I wonder if, now that actually how we teach is moving out of just a select group of faculty into the entire faculty, at least the Carnegie report is pushing us that way, do you see special rules for those of us who have been doing that for a while?
we should let Chris answer that question.
I'm not understanding it.
It goes back to the very beginning. I mean, the Institute started with writing across the curriculum, and so taking writing out of English departments and saying that writing needed to be taught in the context of the doctrinal areas or the areas of study. And then now within the law school saying that writing shouldn't be its own little self-contained place within the law school curriculum. It really needs to be a part of every day doing it. And so I think those of us who teach writing really believe that that's where it has to go, but it's also with a little bit of fear because we know how hard it is to teach writing and whether we can kind of inspire others to take the time and the effort and to study actually how to teach writing before they go forward to teach writing. But I think it has to happen. I think it has to happen not only in other courses, but we need to continue teaching ourselves writing as we go out into practice. As attorneys, we deal with so many different people from so many different experiences, and that the way we write to one client isn't going to be the way you might want to write with another client as you start doing the international. You know, my good old assertion, support for the assertion. Sometimes you put that kind of writing into another cultural context and it just really doesn't work. So it needs to be a continuing process of
yeah, just that we are teaching thinking, not writing, and so really the ways that I think so many of us in writing have sort of figured out how writing reveals thinking allows us to get inside the student's head, and that's true for every class, not just the writing class, and so that's sort of a task we can teach them how to do. And I think this relates to Jill's point about being adaptive, that we can't say to our colleagues on the faculty, well, what you need to do is assign everybody a 10-page paper and then give individual critiques and conferences for each one, because that will not happen. And so, but because of our experience, our knowledge, okay, how can we give, we can't give 100% of that value without 100% of that time perhaps, but we can give 50 or 70% of that value with less time. And so what techniques, we've developed a lot of coping techniques and a lot of other kinds that we can share with those, with our colleagues. Jill, I don't know if you want to.
I would say leadership. I think the Carnegie Report is going to have an impact, and I think we actually are the local professors who know how to do this. So do this, meaning interactive learning and new models for learning. Law students, you know, look at you. You don't want to listen to talking heads. You want to be doing something. And many classrooms are kind of talking heads or quasi-Socratic. So I think we're going to see that legal writing people become leaders. And I'll tell you, I want to add research to the mix. You keep saying legal writing, but the research is really a huge part of this. I'd like to see writing across the curriculum and research across the curriculum. I mean, you ought to be doing tax research and tax papers in your tax classes and so on. But I'm in the funny position right now of having a faculty member who is so excited about the Carnegie Report that she's upset with the legal writing calendar because she doesn't have a space to assign papers and do her midterm exams. And I thought, well, now there's an opportunity for coordination and cooperation, because she can see that the students are responding so well to the activity and the engagement and the being lawyers that's happening in our course. I want some, and she teaches civil procedures, I want them to do papers and you don't have enough room for it. I had to say, I'm sorry, our calendar is set. I can't help you out. It doesn't bother me if you give them more assignments. I'm fine with that. But I think that's kind of a position we're going to see ourselves doing, is we may be leading the curriculum committee. We're going to be leading the remodeling of legal education. We're going to be leading professors in good techniques to use across the curriculum.
Any other questions? I think then we take a break.